So, hello everyone, and welcome to today's first group discussion that we are having here on this channel, where people usually share their awakening experience. But in these previous interviews, a lot of topics actually came up where we thought it would be nice and important to dive a little bit deeper. So it's wonderful that today David and João can join. And actually the topic for today is also a very important one. We want to tackle on the subject of when does somebody has a spiritual awakening and when might it be a mental problem or a psychosis. And just as a disclaimer at the beginning, I mean, we are not therapists. We are just talking out of our experience, which kind of comes from another angle. And I cannot talk for anybody who had a psychosis, and I'm sure it's something kind of different, and still there are overlapping experiences that are, I think, worth speaking about, and but always take it with a grain of yeah, like cautious. Just be cautious, and always we recommend that you go and seek help from a very good therapist. But they're just, as you will see when we're discussing about it, just make sure that it's somebody you can really trust and who maybe has an open mind. And so when we are now talking about these experiences, also keep in mind, I mean, we might tackle it a little bit on that spiritual awakenings and actually experiencing other state of consciousness is in our modern Western society actually a thing that kind of is not in our it's kind of not allowed to have that. So, but when you see other cultures, there you see that like Native Americans or a lot of other countries, they are handling this differently. So also keep that in mind, that we might be talking a little bit about these states and not mental illnesses when we're diving in. But so let's start. And actually, maybe the first thing I would like that both of you would just introduce yourself shortly for the people who want to know more about the two people we are having today. They can see the interviews I already had with them. And just introduce yourself shortly and also talk about a little bit how your experience was, if that was when it happened to you that this question was crossing your mind, or you're losing your mind, or what is happening. And then we can go on. So let's start with David, if you can just start.
Okay. Yes, thank you, Catherine. That's great. Yes, my name is David Bingham, and I'm still in Liverpool at the moment, but soon will be living in Crete. I had a massive Kundalini awakening, but only a relatively short time ago, about 7 years ago. And there is a very deeply Shivaic quality to my experience, and there seems to be acidic quality to my experience as well. So these are the thematics that mainly operate within me, I think, plus a few extras. Do you want me to talk about the time when I came across something that was fearful in my awakening or something like that? Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, I've already in a previous interview talked about the shock of encountering a blasting Kundalini awakening, and how the psyche was sort of shocked with that, but then received some internal guidance, which I think made a great deal of difference to me, because I was reassured by a deeper sense inside myself that all the crazy stuff that was going on was something to be gone with. So basically, I had some internal guidance that helped me through. And I appreciate that not everyone gets those messages, or perhaps is receiving them openly. So yeah, I was extremely fortunate in doing that. But having said that, I mean, with my process, which seems to be quite flourishing, I have a lot of Sahasrara activity and also a lot of third eye activity as well. So it's a combined double whammy. So you didn't just get one for your money, you got two. So so basically what that means for me anyway is the opening of the third eye is an opening to the deeper psyche and the nature of your hidden self, the communal psyche, the human psyche, the soul psyche, everything that's held away, that is usually not visible even to hypnotherapy or anything like that. So I've been on quite a journey with the third eye, encountering things that would probably, if I wasn't prepared, would scare the pants off me. So that's where I've been, and that's where some of my biggest challenges have laid. In terms of understanding the problems of the struggle of the mind and the psyche to cope with things that are challenging, I can talk about that, but I'm not well qualified to talk about the experience of psychosis or mental illness as such. I think when I was younger, I was depressed for a while, but I've not been touched so strongly by those things. But from my angle, I believe that everything that we experience to some degree is touched or affected by the spiritual. So therefore, anything that's experienced, say, for example, within mental health problems, has also a connection to the spiritual as well. So in that sense, I think you did great to bring this subject to our attention, because that which is difficult and that which is challenging, or that which actually is damaging for the self, also has some connection, at least, to the spiritual, I think, as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So João, what about you? We talked before that you had your scary moments. So let's listen.
Yeah, with me, it happened a long time ago already. Was almost 30 years ago. And I was in an ashram, Siddha Yoga, And at that time, it was the tradition that I was practicing. I was young. I started practicing it when I was 18, I guess. So when I went to the ashram, I was 20, turning to 21. I spent my birthday there in the ashram, and it was funny. There was some kind of coincidence, we may call it, or I don't know, some synchronicity, because I was 21 there, and I stayed 21 days there, and it happened a little. See, I was already practicing it. I was doing the meditations, reading the books, everything that I was supposed to do, the practices and the sadhana, they call. And I already had some peak experiences prior to that. I had some 2 or 3 impressive experiences before that, But when I was at the ashram, I was there practicing, doing the rituals and watching some lectures, and when it happened with me, I was watching a lecture by a Swami, and I remember it was a lecture about the Yaneshwar Gita. There is a famous commentary on the Bhagavad Gita by Yaneshwar Maharaj, a great saint from India, And I love that book, that commentary. So I was watching the lecture, but it was after lunch, as I was saying to you, and I was a little heavy, like just laying there, sitting, watching the lecture. And then I felt that heat, that something in the navel area, and it started going up. And I felt like something, at first I thought it was something about the food, like maybe it was,
reflux.
Like, huh?
Yeah,
Yes,
some reflux.
I ate, it was, and then but then I realized it was not, it was like a pulsation, something magnetic field, something like that. And then it started going up, and when it reached the heart, it like kind of opened, and I felt like a love for everyone and everything that as I've never felt before, like a kind of universal love for everybody, like. And then it kept, after a while, it kept going up, and when it reached the forehead or the head, I had that realization, was a deep realization that like I am Shiva, like I am Shiva. And after that, I felt a kind of presence coming down on me, It was the most massive presence I ever felt in my life. Much more
Mm.
I've lost the voice.
Doing meditation, and you have this kind of mindful, like it was, and I felt really like I was Shiva, like, and it was really being in the here now, but in a very intense way, like very, and after that I was there a little for a while. Well, many things happened after that, but then I realized I started developing some paranormal capacities, abilities, and things like telepathy, or in some things like that, and many synchronicities started happening. And I believe in the same day I had also an experience that I felt something dripping in my tongue, sweet. And when I touched the how to call the
palate,
the palate, then I felt that sweetness coming down, and I felt a bliss like I never felt in my life. My whole body was blissful. So it was. At that time, of course, I had read something about Kashmir Saivism and so on, but it was only many years later that I read things more specific, that I realized that it was let's say, a very classical experience in this tradition, But at that time, at first, it was very blissful, very,
yeah. And then when did the fear start? Like some days after?
No. As I said, I stayed there for some 3 weeks in that state, basically. And many things going on, synchronicities and kind of some weird experiences, like things that happened. But after some 3 weeks in that state, I started feeling that it was too much, like too much energy. I started becoming afraid of losing my mind. It was so spacious, so big. So I started for, no, come on. And then my little João there started, no, come on, I can't be enlightened, come on. I'm not Shiva, come on, like. And I start questioning and doubting the experience, because, but also I was fearing it because, well, I don't know, in the Kashmir Shaivism tradition, they say there are levels of awakening also, basically 9 levels of awakening. And in the highest level, actually, the person basically they say euphemistically, leaves the body. Leaves the body means you die. After because the energy is so intense that the body can take it, and then you may actually die if you have this highest level of awakening. But somehow I had an intuition of that. I was afraid of dying or losing my mind, becoming crazy. So I became very anxious, very. I started having some panic actually, and then I went to seek for some help from the people from the administration of the ashram, but then instead of helping me, they kicked me out of the ashram.
Yeah.
And that was the initiation actually, like that was the real initiation.
That's exactly
now
the
you are
point.
by yourself.
That's exactly the point, I think, which is also important that we talk about. It's really, it's because at the time now everybody stresses this waking up, and also let's wake up our Kundalini energy, and they sit there and they breathe, and I'm sitting there and I'm like looking at the facilitator and trying to discern if she's going to handle it, if somebody's going to flap around the floor. So and I think it's important that also this has to be talked about. I mean, when you do that with students, it can happen. And it happened to me because I was in the middle of a yoga class. Not that it was because of the pranayama we did there right now, at that very moment. But we had a lot, I was in a teacher training, so we had a lot of wonderful pranayama the days before. It really brought me there. And the moment it happened was, I was actually also just listening to the teacher reading a Buddhist text. And then I was like becoming very tired. And I was like, I just want to close my eyes and sit. And then it happened, the energy rose. But my fear moment was actually not that moment. For me, it was before, because my awakening, and I heard that from a lot of people, it's like in 2 stages. So the first stage for a lot of people today is they kind of have first a spiritual awakening and then a Kundalini awakening. So, and the spiritual awakening is that which made me very fearful, because I wanted to know the truth. So I went down the rabbit hole. I was reading everything about occultism and what is happening behind the curtains, and all these conspiracy theories like crazy. I was going nearly mad just looking into what is happening actually. And somehow there it happened. So that there came a breaking point where I was nearly losing my mind, and I understood that the way I understood the world until then is not how it works. There are other layers I didn't know, and that made me so kind of fearful. But also that was the moment where I nearly went a bit psychotic, but it helped me to lose a lot of fear. So the fear of dying and everything, and then the energy was able to arise. And that was the moment where I realized, well, a lot of people, I heard a lot of stories, and it always has similar traits. And I think it's very important that we just are aware that a lot of people, they might think they are having a psychotic break, and they go and seek help, and then they get medicated because the psychiatrist never heard of, oh my God, and then I thought I'm God. I mean, let's be honest, when you go and you tell that to a therapists these days, they don't take it very good. And this is where we need a discussion. And there, when somebody is listening and is thinking about, oh my God, what is happening to me? Am I just crazy, or is this a spiritual awakening? I think the most important thing is you're asking it yourself, which is a good indication that, yeah, you feel that there is a lot happening. And I think it's important to try not to go into fear, and still try to talk to people where you, yeah, who you can trust, and just, and also I don't know if you guys know the work of Stanislav Grof.
No.
He's
Yeah.
amazing. So he opened spiritual emergency centers all around the globe. So if somebody is scared, I would suggest also maybe give a call there, and I will put a link in the description below, so that they could also help. I think this is also something.
That
Yeah.
sounds wonderful. That sounds really wonderful to mention that person. But is that still underway now, that provision?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
And
great.
they are really, I mean, Stanislav Grof, I will put a link to his work. He's amazing. He he started in the 60s, and actually, like, he started doing LSD with patients, and he was just a normal psychiatrist, nothing with spirituality. But then he saw what happened to these people in these
Sure.
other states of consciousness, and then he started to be very interested. And then coincidentally, he met his wife, and she had a Kundalini awakening. So that these two, so he's coming from the,
Real experience. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
she's coming from her, and then they started to try to find out how can we help people have this immensely important transformative process, but with guidance and with help. So because a lot of people, they are handicapped during a certain time.
But I don't know if you remember that, but Christina Grof's wife, she was a disciple of Muktananda, and she used to go a lot to this ashram where I had my awakening.
There we go.
Her guru was Muktananda at the time, and she had a Kundalini awakening with him, And Grof was also very fond of Muktananda and went a lot to his ashram and so on. So,
oh my God, I just couldn't remember the name of the Swami, but yeah.
Swami Muktananda, yeah. And she had a problem because she was an alcoholic, I don't know if you remember her story. And she had to deal with that. I think along with her Kundalini awakening, she had to deal with her alcoholism.
Yeah,
it was a real hero's journey for her, like having to integrate that addiction.
Yeah,
with the Kundalini experiences going on, and it was really a healing process.
Yeah, and I think it's very nice that we have that I have the two of you here, and also me, because actually I'm a good example of somebody who's quite struggling with her pros. Well, yeah, I do. I still have a lot of dark night of the souls, and I know exactly what depression is and how it feels, and so I'm still struggling with the dark side, which is intense, much more intense now since the Kundalini awakening. It's like I have this I feel, but at least I feel now it's not my pain, but I'm very prone to go into the collective pain, and it just overwhelms me, and then which doesn't help anyone, but I have to find out how I discern. So it's beautiful that we have these different approaches. And I think, David, like you had quite a smooth Kundalini approach.
Yes. I mean,
Right?
I think I got a pass. I got an invisible pass because I'd done some very deep service to helping my father, who was a difficult man, but he had advanced dementia, and there was lots of reasons why I shouldn't help him. But it turned out that helping him was the best thing that transformed his life and my life for many years. And that deep service without a goal in mind seemed to form a kind of, well, I look at it now and I can understand that it was a kind of karma yoga being practiced without knowing it. So there was something being deeply invested in a cause that seemed fairly impossible. But the benefit that came from that was that I think I got quite a good pass when it came to the experience about how to, something up there was looking after me a little bit because of some kind of investment and balance that happened.
And I'm very interested now, like, because for a lot of people, it's funny. And again, I think this is also important to demystify. When we're talking about spiritual awakenings, most people, they see a person who is like and light around them, and they are very happy and blissful, and unicorns are everywhere. But the truth of most spiritual awakenings is like it's a rough ride and you're getting scared, because we exactly, again, that is not being taught to us in Western modern society, that it's okay to have another state of consciousness. So as soon as this happens, we're like, oh my God, I'm a psychopath. I go into a psychosis. I'm totally crazy. And we handle this very important experience, which is important that you go into it without fear. We're handling it with the fear of losing our minds.
I have some pet theories, which I wouldn't mind pushing past you and João, and you may not agree with it. So that's probably quite good for conversation, I think. If you don't mind, I have a few angles on this. Firstly, a sort of, shall we say, a general soft depression where, it sort of gently rolls in on you and you don't feel it so much. And eventually you feel quite removed from somehow your deep self and you feel depressed. Now, for me, my theoretical take on that, and you can disagree, is that I think that it means that to some degree you've become more distanced from your deeper self, your soul, because the pain of the depression is the alienation from that which you are. And even if ordinary folks don't have depression, they're still largely, without knowing it, connected to their souls. So basically, when they fall into depression, or it comes around the corner, comes knocking at the door, they gradually move away from that which unconsciously they were connected to anyway. That's one.
I think it's absolutely true on the spiritual level. Again, you know what I mean? It's like it's always a calling of coming back to you, and it's funny because right before that I was dialing in, I was reading a text a friend posted. I was also interviewing him, Mickey, if you hear us. And he was writing that he has like strong feelings like fear at the moment, and he realizes that this is always just a calling to come back home to himself, and not something I have to think about, why am I fearful? What happened right now that I am fearful? It's more these feelings are here to call you back. So it's beautiful coincidence. So and João, what are your thoughts about that? Do you know depression? Nah, I don't hear you.
I can give my
sorry,
second. Oh, sorry, he's been away.
But well, I had some experience, let's say, of my dark night of the soul after the awakening. So I have a theory of also about the process, because I don't think that it is only people talk a lot about the awakening proper, the events, but I think it is more like a process, because I think it's worth thinking about a process of a journey actually more than, because the event, the way I see it, actually is not only my understanding. It is what I've learned from my teacher, the late great Professor Claudio Naranjo, was my after that experience in the ashram. I came to meet him some years after, and he was the one who really helped me to integrate and have a better understanding of that experience, And you said in the beginning that it is important to have help somehow. You mentioned Grof, Professor Naranjo. He was he knew Grof. They were friends, They were pioneers from that 60s,
Arrow.
that transpersonal psychology, humanistic psychology, all that. But Professor Naranjo also met Muktananda, Swami Muktananda, but he had this understanding. Basically, we can say this process has three major stages or states that they sometimes overlap, and they get mixed sometimes, of course. But generally, it follows this sequence. That is the awakening, a kind of expansion of consciousness. You expand and have a major event that may be preceded by some smaller peak experiences, but there is this major event, that moment when a turning point, let's say, when something big happens. But then after a while, that may last months or weeks or years, generally some years, then you have this contraction of consciousness. That is this experience of dark night of the soul, generally, as more commonly known. And it may last years. You can be in and out of this experience also of dark night. And generally, after a while, it also may take some time, some years for most people. You may reach this unity experience that today is more well known as non-duality. People call it more, because of course there are differences between the understanding of non-duality from Vajrayana, Tibetan Buddhism, and Advaita Vedanta, and Kashmir Shaivism, Sufism, Christian mysticism. Everyone has its own, his own flavor of non-duality and this unitive experience. The way they understand the absolute, the absolute reality. But as I said, sometimes these experiences overlap. But what I was going to say, that each one of these stages or experience has its own possible distortions or pathologies or problem or traps, maybe also. So I guess today we won't be able to talk about it because we don't have time. But anyway, I thought a lot about, because I'm saying this because it is something that I learned from Professor Naranjo, but it is also based on my own experience a lot. Like I've been through a lot of all these states and stages. So for example, in the awakening experience, something that is Professor Naranjo, he used to say that what he called the post-illuminative syndrome, or the sorcerer's apprentice syndrome. He said that it is part of the problem. It's not something, in his vision, it was not something kind of exception or distortion. He felt that this was part of the process. To some degree, some people it is very subtle, and some people it is very grandiose to have this kind of ego inflation. Because he used to joke and say, like, when we get enlightened, the ego also gets enlightened. So generally it gets a little inflated, you know. And this can manifest in many ways, you know. And for example, for the Sorcerer's Apprentice image, he used to explain using that Disney, Walt Disney cartoon. I don't know if you know that. Perhaps David know it because it's an old one, more older than me.
I know.
It's that
Me
movie.
too, I know it.
You know it, Mickey Mouse, when he's in the castle. And he takes there is a magus, a witch, and he takes the wand and he starts waving it, and the brooms and the objects start to dance.
Yeah, I know. I know as well.
And then it starts getting a little chaotic, you know, out of control. Yeah. And then the magus come and a little angry, you know, like Gandalf, and he takes the wand and he fixes the situation. But Professor Naranjo used to say that it is a good image of these, maybe a good image of these post-illuminative syndrome, as it's called. That generally, since people after this stage start to, they get you get more energized and charismatic, and you want to share that with others, you know. So but generally people start to teach, to put themselves in position of teachers or gurus or therapists. And some the more exaggerated, just finished. At times they get this kind of messianic syndrome, you know, messianic complex. I know some examples of people who really think they are Jesus, or they are, you know, they start to want to save the world.
That's also, you know? I think it's important also to, for me, this is also something I want to demystify, which is very important for me, because it happened to me. I was talking to, who was I talking to? And it was so beautiful. Oh, with James, the one I did the interview. We were talking about, this is also holding people back from awakening. They think it only happens to saint people. And I tell you, I mean, the moment it happened to me, this Kundalini awakening, I was smoking cigarettes. I was partying too much. I was a single mom, overstressed and not all the time nice, and I'm swearing a lot. And I have my ego, and it's okay. And I think it's very important also that the thing with kill your ego, don't.
Yes.
I know it's so important for me. Let's not try to be saints. Just try to be ourselves and wake up. It's really, I see the healing culture at the moment, and it drives me crazy. And it's good. Maybe we can also talk a little bit about that, because it goes a bit in the same direction about mental health. I mean, what I find very interesting is that we have now these spiritual communities, and it's beautiful, it's wonderful, and they're like, yeah, we don't have anything to do with religion. But the funny thing is, they are doing the same stuff, just in a new soup. I mean, it's really, it's all about, you just have to heal your ancestors, and then you're going to be happy. And then, your mom and your inner child. Hold your inner child for months and months and months, and oh,
You
trauma.
can squeeze your inner child to death, can't you?
Everything is trauma. We all
Yeah.
have traumas because we have a split nail, and it's just like they don't
Split nail.
understand. They are doing the same. Again,
Yes.
he's telling the people, you are not right. You just have to heal a bit more. And it's also a topic we really have to discuss.
I
David,
get you.
what is your take on that?
Well, I'm yes, I agree with that. Interesting, your take on what you just said. I think, I mean, this is going to really go out the way, but I think a lot of the non-dual experience, especially when people feel that they're immersed, but yet they have an operational mind, but hidden from them, I think that's a dissociative disorder.
Yeah.
And this isn't a label I'm going to stick on everyone who believes in non-dual stuff, but and obviously has had the great experience of that and is immersed in that still. But nevertheless, the loss of the mind as a minor entity that doesn't play much of a part or isn't noticed is a real weakness in on the part of the human being, because you are a mind, you are an ego, like you've indicated before. The ego is active, but if you're not aware of it, or you think you're not aware of it, or you're not feel as though you're bound by it, then what are you? You're not a functioning human.
Yeah,
You've got something, there's an issue for you because
exactly.
you've had a great experience, but you've actually, somehow you've not integrated it more into your embodied self. And you've not gone through that journey yet you think you've arrived.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
this is the dissociative disorder, I think, spiritually.
I think that's the point what João was mentioning before, that there are on each section there's another pitfall actually,
Absolutely.
and also that, yeah, I know we all agree, I'm sure, that as soon as we're talking about levels or pitfalls, I kind of feel a compression, because I know it's not about it. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't sit right with me that there are pitfalls and levels, and so we
Well,
feel that, right?
I mean, if we look at the example of Jesus and the Buddha, sorry to, get a bit religious here.
Yeah.
I'm good
with that. I don't have it.
Okay. without the religious context, but the wonderful individuals. They were at the height of their experience, and they went through the worst challenges and internal transitions they faced under the Bodhi tree and in the desert. Amazing challenges beyond the realm of perhaps normal people could endure. So if you're raising your level, then the challenges that come at that level will be even higher, possibly.
Yeah. But
so so I mean, the idea that there's lots of us walking around here who've got nothing left to realize because we're non-dual and we've realized our connection with the universal, that doesn't quite fit with that kind of experience.
It would be great if they come back and help us here on Earth. I mean, it's
Yeah,
wonderful. I appreciate the realization, but we need them.
Yeah.
But
my other go on, João.
David, you said something that I was planning to talk about. That is this dissociative experience. When I said about the unitive experience or non-dual, I was going to talk about exactly about dissociation experience and depersonalization also. I saw that happening, and this to myself I question, like, if everything is non-dual, if everything is Shiva or Brahman or whatever you want to call it, it's like everything but your ego, everything but your normal life.
Yes.
Your relationships. It's very dual.
It's a great point. This is a great point. The non-dual should include your ego. Why does it not include your ego?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, again, the point is, I mean, this realization we all had kind of in this experience. It's like, oh my God, it's really true. I mean, I had impressive experiences where I understood, oh my God, it's me. I'm the storyteller. It's just me. There's only me, and I'm telling these stories time and time again but it's one story which is just universal, and we break it down. And I, as Catherine, then have my mother issues, but it's actually it's a topic about feminine energy. But I'm playing here with this, you know what I mean. But
The issues.
the point is, we all had this experience, and it's true. But that's on the spiritual level. Let's keep it. Let's leave it there. But we are here on planet Earth, and we have to now play with it. And I think it's a pity if you try to flee from the planet. And I did that for a long time, because when I had this wonderful experience, I always wanted to go back there.
Yeah.
But then you
Well,
don't.
if we've suffered in our life, and if we've had some hard times, or if we're an older adult and we've actually learned that our mind is not such a trustworthy thing, and we made some really crap decisions at certain points in our life, well, we get to distrust the mind, and we think of it as more problematic and perhaps not very helpful to our growth. And in the West in particular, it seems that there's a real downer on the ego self and the mind, that somehow it's the cause of my trouble. And if only I was free of my mind, I wouldn't have any problems.
Yeah.
So you can see the way the logic goes. So that if you have a blasting experience that somehow launches you out of yourself, and you look down from the heady heights and you just see the little self, and you say the little self doesn't matter anymore, well, that's partly motivated by the wish to escape yourself.
But how can
And
we?
this is a weakness in your development. Yeah.
How can we? So how can we help people? You know, like when they feel a lot of fear in such a state. What's the advice there? And also for other people, you know, how can you handle a person who has such an experience? João, you want to?
But
Good question.
Yeah, I wanted to say something about it. But by one hand, we want to get rid of our egos, our let's say, daily situations and minds and all that. But it also, I think that this kind of let's say, when people get attached to the spiritual experience, it is also very narcissistic. Actually, you know, it's a form of even solipsism. The people think that. So it like a paradoxical, because they want to get rid of the ego, but actually it's very narcissistic, actually, because they create what I call a kind of enlightened golden bubble. You know, nothing touches me anymore.
But also,
I live in the world like climate change. No, this is only play of consciousness. This is only Maya. Oh, if a fascist takes over your country, oh no, this is only the play of light and dark or consciousness. So well, but it affects you and your life directly. How can you not care about this, you know? And that's why I think the traditional Buddhism stresses a lot of also these two wings of enlightenment, wisdom and compassion. You know, compassion also means that you care about yourself, also your own pain, your own situation, and other people's situations and pain. You know? And so I think people get a little too narcissistic, actually. You know?
Yeah, but also there, I mean, honestly, out of my own experience, when it comes to that can also hinder you a lot of, because I was, and all still now, I'm not talking about my experience like openly in my friend circle, exactly because I'm scared that people think, oh, now she thinks she's something special, which is also a hindering stone again for me to be just authentically me.
Yes,
that
absolutely.
It's that, again, that fear that somebody will judge me just because I had this experience, and now I have to be the nicest person on earth, and I should never smoke a cigarette again because people will think, oh, she had a Kundalini awakening, she's not.
Yes.
And I'm fed up with it, you know. It's and it's both sides. I'm just a human being, and this is also something I want to demystify for the people, because it's a trap.
Sure.
First of all, people, when they think they have to be saints before it can happen, it will never happen. So just be you. If it should happen, it will happen, even if you are in a mud hole, or, you know, you don't have to be all clean and wonderful. That is a hindering stone for people for self-realization. And the other, what did I want?
What was the...
Yeah, it's just, I think that that is very important to demystify. And also another important thing is, only because somebody had a Kundalini awakening, don't trust him fully. It's just a human. No, and if somebody can give Shakti pot,
watch out.
Well, yeah. First of all, watch out, because don't. And also, that doesn't mean he's all known and...
Oh, no. They could be, like João says, very invested in the power of that role, and they actually might have an agenda that serves a not very helpful purpose, that's not actually particularly going to help you on your journey. You know, it's quite possible, and even in certain cases likely. So what I was going to say was that there's something. I mean, I agree with the points made about different levels and different tests at different levels, but there's something in the nature of just being invited to this dance that is the hard thing to deal with, and maybe it's meant to be a hard thing to deal with. Maybe there's only certain people that are going to progress at certain times in this life and make that progress, and then be reborn again and hopefully make a bit more progress as well in future. So it's an invite. It's not it's an achievement, but it's not a realization. It's an invite. And these things are, you know, even when the door is booted in and there's a great bright light and hallelujah, it's an invite. So this is the thing that the mind struggles to deal with. I believe is that what you do is then after, you know, you certainly get a great experience from it, and it's very immensely profound, and it changes your world and your life. But then what does the mind then deal with? But with this, because the mind is so able and adept at making stories afterwards and putting a label on it, or putting it in a little twisted compartment where you think you've understood it. And of course, this is mysticism. This is really deep stuff that the mind isn't really the master of. And yet it tries to ascribe meanings to things and tries to help you, because this is our survival instinct. We try to understand everything, even when we can't understand things.
It's funny because you wrote exactly that down in your video, in the comments to somebody, and it touched me again on a very, very deep level. I understand what you're saying, because it also it plays into my experience of, oh my God, I'm telling a story here of energies that are universal, but because I cannot understand them fully, I fractal them into what I know. I see my mom and she's stressing me out. You know, I just
this is fascinating. It's a fascinating subject. I think our minds tend to mangle things that it can, when you can come across something new that is a bit unfamiliar to you or even surprising, but you can't ignore it, then what the mind does is it seems to find what it can recognize in that object, but it may not understand the whole object. But what it does is it takes what it knows and it makes it according to your matrix, then your way of understanding things. So basically you've got a mangled object that doesn't, your understanding or your internal description doesn't really match perhaps the nature of the experience. So this is the nature of human distortion. We think we witness things and we think we can understand things and we think we are intelligent, but actually we've got a mind that's this kind of interesting machination of a machine that really chews things up sometimes, or even makes you, if it's so you can't really grasp it at all, it'll make you forget about it as though it's not important.
I like that one.
So
And
it's
David,
got. Sorry, go on.
Yeah.
this what you're saying remind me of that. Maybe you know that story of the elephant in the dark.
Oh yeah,
You
people,
know the story.
different people going and touching the elephant in different places. Yeah, yeah,
I mean,
yeah. That's great.
we don't know. Everyone gives a description of what it is, but limited to their own
Sure.
prejudices and their own ideas, you know. But actually, as you said, it's a mystery, you know. In the dark, we are really trying to find words to something that is beyond words, maybe.
Yeah, but
I mean, this is a key to the issue as well of the disturbance that people do experience mentally. That you know, we are we're allies to our mind, but also we can be victims to our mind as well. And being a victim to your mind, it's not something you choose. It's something that just happens to you. So none of us would want to find ourselves in a very distorted place. I mean, we all have great intentions to make the best understandings that we can of things. But inevitably, the mind can lead you down some interesting alleyways where you create stories for yourself or explanations of that which is obviously quite, in our case, quite esoteric and quite unusual. And you think, oh, that must be it. And you're just making up a story. It's just another layered story in your experience. And then, of course, if you really have quite a lot of stories, then what you want to go and do is teach other people. Oh, yeah, you've got to do it this way.
Yeah,
so
but that's also what I like about these talks, you know. Everybody comes with a certain perspective, and it's so beautiful because actually every time somebody tells his story, her story, I see certain layers that cross with mine. So we are really so connected, and I think it's beautiful if we start to open up and bring the puzzle pieces together. So let's just talk about it. And I think every time after when I'm listening to another interview or when I'm talking to somebody, it helps me to open my consciousness again. Maybe it's also in my awareness what he's talking about, and so it can help a lot. But yeah, so just to wrap it up because it's nearly an hour. It's
I would like to return to some points. May I? Fast.
Yeah, sure.
Because I was talking about the awakening experience proper, you know, that event and the possible outcomes of that, you know. And there is an example I would like to give here, because here in Brazil, there is a very famous guy. It's called Henri Cristo, Henri Christ. He dresses like Jesus, you know, he has a beard and a long hair, and he even wears a crown of thorns, but made of plastic, you know. But the thorns that out, they are not in, you know. Like, he's a kind of figure, you know. And you can search in the Google, you know, Henri Cristo, Henri Christ, he's a figure. But I was reading about him, and I read that he must be in his 70s now, 70 years old, more or less. But he was a hippie in the 70s, you know, in the 60s and the 70s. And he took ayahuasca or something, psychedelics, and he said he had an awakening experience of Kundalini. You know? He calls the Holy Spirit, but only that after the experience, he started thinking that he was the reincarnation of Jesus, you know, and that he came to save he was the second coming, you know, like, and so he started dressing like Jesus, looking like Jesus, and he has a following, you know, but he's a more the harmless type, you know. He's not abusive, it seems, or in any way. But I believe he's the case that someone who maybe had a tendency to be psychotic, you know, to be schizophrenic, and he had an awakening, and somehow he got into this messianic trip, you know, of being Jesus and so on. And there is this another guy here who is kind of the esoteric version of Henri. You know, we call him Henri. So he's the esoteric version of Henri. because this guy was an astrologer also in the 70s. He read everything about theosophy, occultism, and he knows everything. He wrote many books, and but all his books have this distortion, because he tries to prove that he is the Maitreya, the Kalki avatar, the king of Shambhala. So he also had an awakening experience in the 70s. I guess he also used ayahuasca, but he has this trip, being the Kalki avatar, the Maitreya. So all his books, they have some interesting stuff in his books now, because he knows a lot about astrology and occultism and all that, this and that. But they all have these, these distortion to prove that he is the one,
Yeah.
So,
but
this is a possible outcome, that to enhance some schizophrenic tendencies the person may have. But also, I guess there is a darker danger in this stage of awakening. As I said, I guess there are some levels of awakening. And here in Brazil, we have a lot of people who have this kind of mediumship experiences, to channel and to have astral projections and to be healers, things like that. This kind of shamanic, occult type of experience. And I think that people who have this, there is a danger to turn into what traditionally was called black magic. Today perhaps we would call more politically correct dark magic, perhaps, to use this charisma, this power, perhaps these healing powers to one's own benefit. To get power, to get money, to get sex. So there is a very famous example here in Brazil, a guy called João de Deus. There is even a documentary about him. João de Deus is John of God, Oh,
I know.
This guy, he was a famous healer.
Yes, that's right.
He really healed a lot of people, but he sexually abused hundreds of women. So this is a possible outcome or a distortion of the awakening experience also, I believe, a darker one. So we have these cases of abusive gurus and abusive teachers and therapists and all that. It is also possible. So one thing, just to finish, I guess it was Grof, Stanislav Grof, you mentioned. I guess I read one of his books. He said the mystic swims in the sea where the psychotic drowns. People. But you see, this is a very kind of symbolic image, because actually I think there is a thin line sometimes between madness and the mystical experience. Sometimes you can't tell actually one from another, because you see, in the many traditions you have that tradition of the crazy wisdom. There are some gurus that they act like crazy people, but once I read the Dalai Lama saying, how can you tell if a person is a real crazy wisdom teacher, guru? And he said, well, if you have to see for yourself if you're getting crazier or wiser. If you're getting wiser, so it's good. But if you're getting crazier,
but also the crazy ones can make you wise as well. Oh no, I think and I mean these are good examples that in the end it's all about that you even around these kind of people who say they're healers and they maybe have these capacities, it's still an invitation to wake up. So do you feel good? And it doesn't, it just brings you always back to yourself and not following any guru, because and also, I mean, I like all the stories. I watched the new Dune movie. I don't know if you saw it, and It's
Which one?
amazing. June.
Jung? What?
June.
June. Yeah.
No, I don't know.
So, and it's also about this awakening and the pitfalls, you know, the people who kind of go crazy and take it as their own. And I think as I see it right now, it's gonna be the first time that the movie is showing how dangerous it can also be. You know, when you start to have visions and you just follow them, you think this is now the truth.
This is where I sort of would draw a line as well, just to finish off.
Yeah.
The idea of a vision obviously can be very helpful and also misleading. But for me, at least in my opinion, if a vision is encountered with the mind settled more into the greater self and the soul, then that which you learn and discern from it does have meaning. It does have an enduring meaning, in fact, and it changes. It can change your life, or it changes your orientation and it expands you. So it's about finding the gold in there, the gold dust. Basically, you need the equipment in harmony and balance of the mind integrated into the deeper self and the intuitive self in harmony and harness with that in order to really gain greater discernment, because that's the internal journey, as far as I'm concerned, at least. And it provides a much sounder basis for the challenges that come after that. And it gives you a kind of feeling of confidence and stability as well. Not overconfidence, hopefully, but some stability that, well, whatever comes my way, well, let's see what happens. Rather than some wild spinning story in your head about who you are and what you think you are. You know, this is different. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So just at the end, I mean, I think it's important. We were talking a lot, and it was always tackling this our experiences with other states of consciousness, so the viewers can have a glimpse of how we feel when you have these states, or when you always go back and forth in between these states. And but in the end, if somebody's struggling, like on your own, maybe you're watching this video because you really you feel like you don't know where you are at with your experience, or you have a friend, or you are a therapist and you think, oh my God, is he now psychotic? But he seems so grounded and actually very an intelligent person. Just to wrap it up and say, we have to bring into our worldview again that there are other states of consciousness and it's okay. And from there, discern then, but only because a person has another state of consciousness, as long as it's kind of helping him to maybe the first time in years see where a lot of fear is coming from. And yeah, maybe he's always haunted by a wolf, but there is something coming up. And just as long as it helps the person, if he's stable and functioning, then don't medicate them immediately, because it can halt the process. And of course, if you have any doubts, then search help, or as a therapist, give them help. And yeah, I think that's kind of how to wrap it up.
Thank you. Thank you. That's great.
Yeah, and I think people, well, I mean, it was so short and small what I said at the end. But if you're really interested in that topic, please read into it a lot, because this also helps you to bring it into your consciousness, that there are different ways of seeing reality also in a spiritual sense, and it's okay and it can help. So just gather a lot of information, and that will help yourself to come into that state where you think that's actually kind of normal and it's okay. So when it happens to you the next time, you're not that fearful. Yeah. So thank you very much. And
Thank you.
Thank you.
let
Thank
me
you,
know
Really
David.
enjoyed it.
if
Thank you,
something,
João. Thank you.
yeah, thank you so both of you. It's really inspiring. And let me know if something comes up afterwards. Then we can see if we can bring it in somehow in comments or whatever, because sometimes afterwards you're like, wow, that helped me actually a lot. So I can bring it
I
in.
didn't even get into the dark night of the soul. That will be another
Yeah.
another long process.
Oh yeah. That's of
That
course
takes more time, João.
that's yeah, like dark nights of the soul, that's a big topic as well, where people are often quite of afraid. So we can discuss
Yeah.
that another time. But enjoy your evening and thank
You
you
too.
very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you again.